Hello guys, LF here, and today we are talking about traits. So what are traits? Traits are basically the difference maker. Traits are additional stats that a piece of gear can have. The difference between someone that has gear with max traits and someone who doesn't is enormous and at times insurmountable. When you hover over a piece of gear, you will notice that it says traits on it. Each piece of gear has a set of possible traits that they can have. You can find that out by clicking trait list after clicking the piece of gear, and it'll tell you what traits it can get and the other pieces of gear that will also have it as a possibility. Now, one thing to note is that if you're doing this on a piece of blue gear, you will not see anything beyond blue in the options on the side here. If you're doing it here, for example, for this Carnix here, let's say I'm going to go ahead and click hit, you'll only see tier 1 pieces of equipment here, right? But if I do it on a tier 2 piece of equipment, for example, it will start to show tier 2 equipment. You can see epic level 2 on there on the top left of that description. Each piece of gear will have a set of possible traits that they can have when receiving a piece of gear, whether through looting or crafting. They automatically have one of the possible traits on them. So if you look at a piece of gear here, you'll notice right away it has mana regen. If you look into the trait list here, you'll see that mana regen is one of the possible traits that it can have. And this is very important when you're gearing, because let's say that you're gearing towards or against ranged and melee, then you want traits or gear that have traits that go for melee evasion or ranged evasion, for example. If you are a tank and you want a lot of HP, then you want to gear towards certain gear that will give you that max health. So to start, before we go into this a little bit deeper, the main thing first is that if you're looking at green gear can have up to 2 lines of traits and up to tier 2. You can go ahead and see that under gear here. So you can see that it has up to 2 lines of traits, right? And it can have up to tier 2. Tier 1 currently, upgrade it and it will be tier 2, right? And then for blue gear, you will have 3 lines of traits possible, right? And it can go up to tier 3. And then for purple gear, for both T1 and T2, you will have up to 3 lines of traits, and then eventually a resonance effect, which we discussed in a previous video, and it can go up to tier 4 along with tier 1 as well. It go up to tier 4. So the next question here is going to be, well, how do you add traits and how do you upgrade the tier of your traits? So in order to add lines of traits, let's say, for example, this one right here, there's locked on there. These two are still locked, right? In order for me to add lines of traits here, I would need to have the exact same piece of gear in order to unlock these traits, or something that we'll discuss after, unlock stones. We'll discuss that afterwards, okay? And then in order to level up your tier when it comes to traits, you will need a piece of equipment that is on the same slot. Now, what do I mean by same slot? So essentially, when you open up your equipment here, same slot means the same slot over here. So this one right here, I can only increase the tier of these traits if it's another helmet slot. That's the same for every piece of slot that you see here. The difference is going to be with the weapons, because weapons technically are on the same slot. So if I wanted to level up this max health, I could use a max health from a different type of weapon that's not a sword, let's say like a great sword, and I can actually increase the ranking of the traits here. Let's say like this bow right here. It's also a weapon slot. So let's say that it has heavy attack chance on this one right now, as you can see. I can use a weapon with a heavy attack chance on it to add on to this right here, because they are on the same weapon slot. They're essentially a weapon slot, right? So that's the major difference that you should pay attention to, just in case you get weapons that have the traits that you want, but they're not the weapon that you're using. You can still use them to rank up your traits, right? Or to tier up your traits, rather. And also in terms of traits, for example, you can use lower tier gear, but they will have a lower chance to succeed. And if they fail, you will get these blessings. We'll discuss this later. Basically, if I were to put a tier 1 purple into a tier 1 purple, it would be 100% chance to succeed. But if let's say that I have hits on this lower piece of gear, I can go ahead and use this. The only thing is it's going to be a lot less. If I put this on here, it will only have a 10% chance to succeed unless I use blessing, which I've gotten from failing to increase the tiers of the traits by using lower gear. And if I were to use a green gear on a piece of tier 1, it's going to be a lot less. And then eventually when you transfer that into a higher piece of gear, let's say you're fully traded on your tier 1 and you transfer it to a tier 2 weapon, for example, then you get some of that value back in that manner as well. Next thing that I want to discuss here are the unlock stones. So what are unlock stones? Unlock stones are these things right here, right? So if you want to convert, let's say I want to convert this trait, and we saw this in the previous video. I want to convert this hit to heavy attack. I will need unlock stones, and I will also need trait conversion stones with that. But let's say that this was empty, right? Let's go ahead and try this out right here. So let's say that this was empty and I want to add a trait here. So let's say that I don't have an exact copy of this weapon here. What's going to happen is I'm going to go ahead and click here into unlock trait selectively. And you can see again under here, another trait unlock stone. This is very, very crucial because once you unlock this trait line right here, you can then use any weapon slot for this, for example, in order to try to get that up, even if you have to do it slowly, right? So you can see there's a lot less wastage with this method compared to any other upgrade system that you might be used to, right? BDO. So then the next question is going to be, where do you get these unlock stones? So while we don't actually know what Amazon is going to do, because right now you can, even though it doesn't tell you on here of certain ways to get it, you can actually get it from the battle pass. And we don't know if Amazon is going to do this same thing as well. I don't want to focus on that too much, but anything that you want to get in the game, if you want to find out where to get it, you can just go ahead and click it, go to how to acquire Mystic Portals. One of the reasons why I wanted you to buy Mystic Keys every single day, because there is a chance to get those from there, and you want to stack them as early as possible, because depending on how accessible they are going to be for the global launch, depending on Amazon again, then that means that you may or may not want to save them up all the way until maybe you get your tier 2s. And then the last part here, I know I tackled it already, but just wanted to kind of show you the blessing system that they have, right? So just as an example, I'm going to try to put this blue here, and you can see that there's blessings here. This means that I've already failed. So you can kind of like read up on there the certain effects of blessing, but essentially what blessings are they are fail stacks. So for example, let's go ahead. I'm not going to use blessings, right? I'm going to try to use a blue one on here, and let's say that it fails, then the blessing will increase as you can see here. And then when I try to use blessing, it's going to be a lot more than it was before. Before it was at 8% for this green, now it's at 12%. And let's say that I use this green, right? Go ahead and use that green, and then as soon as it fails, it adds a corresponding amount of blessings depending on the rarity as well. So that's essentially traits in a nutshell. It is something that you have to really pay attention to, because messing up, especially with purples and above and early game, even blues, if you mess up your traits, they are kind of expensive to especially if you're going at it as a free-to-play or a low spender. Messing up on traits is not ideal, because you end up wasting a lot of resources that you usually don't have to, right? And especially if you're free-to-play, you do not want to mess this up. So please plan your gear accordingly, and anytime that you are unsure, please go ahead and ask any of the streamers, any of the people that have played KR. Ask me in the comments, ask me on stream, ask me on Discord, because I would really hate to see somebody mess these things up and then feel discouraged. And a lot of the times people tend to quit. I do not want to see that happen, because I want to see this game succeed. I want you to succeed, and I want you to have fun playing this game, fully knowing that you are optimizing your progression. So again, if you have any questions, if you need any guidance, even if I don't know it, I will do my best to find out for you, just as long as your progression in this game is very much enjoyable. All right, so I'll catch you guys on the next video. Peace.